Today, on the Attorney Career Advice Podcast with Harrison Barnes.
Recruiters these days, many times are better off. In our company, sometimes we have people that are specialists that will only be responsible for talking to new candidates and people that are only responsible for talking to law firms.
Welcome back to the podcast. How are you today, Harrison?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about today's subject because I think this is really fascinating, and I can imagine a lot of attorneys who have never looked into working with a legal recruiter don't really understand that there's a lot of things that a legal recruiter can do for you that you can't necessarily do for yourself. And a lot of it stems from just the basic fact that self-promotion has a very different, feel and ring to it than being promoted by an outside party. So let's dive in and just in your own words, but tell us a little bit of an overview. Why is it that working with a legal recruiter can be so advantageous over finding a law firm job by yourself?
Wow. There's a lot of reasons, that it makes sense to work with a recruiter. And obviously anything I say would be considered self-serving. I could talk a lot about it in a lot of detail, but the main reason is that it depends on the recruiter you work with. But if you work with a good recruiter, the good recruiter is basically going to be able to position you in a way that you look strong to law firms. That's the first thing the employers you're working with. So they will take aspects of your background. They'll work on your resume. If necessary, they will craft a narrative around you that makes you look good to firms. And then after they do all those things, then they will research and they'll have different contacts that you wouldn't know. And they'll know the kind of things that the firm is looking for that they're sending you to. And they'll be able to present you to the right firms. And a good recruiter doesn't just look at jobs. They look at firms that have ongoing needs, and they understand in a lot of depth what firms are looking for. So most people work with a good recruiter end up getting many more jobs than they would if they weren't working with a recruiter. And so that to me is one of the main things, but there's definitely a lot more to it than that. They will be available to talk to you before interviews and help you frame your candidacy. They will update you on jobs on an ongoing basis. They provide a good service that way. They're researching the market and figuring out what's out there. They're able to push you in a direction that you might not normally do, not really go in. They're following up with firms. They're keeping you encouraged, and they're doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that a good recruiter does that normally people would do on their own. And so they get you positions that you would get normally. And that's the main thing I would say.
You touched on something at the end there about how a good recruiter builds your enthusiasm and gives you encouragement. And that can be really powerful, just having an advocate, having somebody on your side who's rooting for you and is supporting you and offering you guidance and assistance and training. That can be a very powerful motivator. And that can be a big difference in like the interview process when you actually have to put on your best face and really show all of yourself and impress people. So when you have somebody encouraging you and giving you this enthusiasm and drive, that can actually help you push you past the finish line and get you that job. So tell me a little bit more about what is the process of working with a recruiter, and how do you train or how do you encourage and refine a candidate so that they're the most presentable and that they're the most prepared for interviews, things like that?
How do I make sure the candidate's most prepared for interviews?
Yeah. What guidance do you offer? What assistance do you provide? Obviously, these podcasts are one example of a training resource that you provide to everyone, including the candidates that you work with. What are some other like one-on-one personal benefits that attorney candidates will experience when they're working with?
Some of the main benefits are the first thing, there's a whole process that a good recruiter will go through with the person that it's working with. And so the first thing they're going to do is they're going to elicit a lot of information from you. So they're going to do what they can to understand your background, what you're seeking to do. They're going to tell you what you're capable of. If there's different limits and stuff to what you may be capable of, they'll talk to you about that. Or they'll tell you that you may need to take one thing before you make the next move in your career. They'll tell you about the hiring. So they'll just get a lot of information. And then after they get that information, they will put together basically an in-depth presentation about you. And when we do it, we typically do things like we'll do a write-up of at least a few pages, sometimes long. It depends on the person. But we will and make sure that work product is perfect in terms of being proofread and looking very good to the firms, and that it has different information about the candidate on it. And then we'll also work on what basically we'll do whatever we can to make sure that the candidate looks really good. Those are the main things. And then sending them the candidate jobs and communicating with them quite often. We'll communicate with our candidates several times a week. And then in addition to communicating with them, we're following up with firms. Not everybody gets every job that they interview with. And so if someone doesn't, then we'll talk to them and find out from the firm what they could have done better, and then make plans to make sure that things are better the next time. I'm a real believer with my candidates. I believe that the people that our firm works with have the right to really talk to a lot of different employers during the course of their search. And so we do whatever we can to interview people, to introduce them to a lot of different employers.
One of the things that really fascinates me is that it takes a very specific kind of personality to be a successful legal recruiter. And you really have to be the type of person who cares a lot about other people and is very interested in helping people in a direct one-to-one way. So just based on your past experience, can you tell me about the types of people, the types of personalities that become legal recruiters? Like, who can an attorney expect to interact with when they come to a legal recruiting firm?
Do you want to take back control of your legal career? We have a solution for you. Harrison Barnes, the #1 legal recruiter with over 20 years of experience, hosts weekly webinars followed by live Q&A sessions every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. These webinars are packed with helpful information that you can use to advance your legal career. Best of all, after each webinar, Harrison stays for as long as needed in order to answer every question. Webinars take place on Zoom, and you can join the next webinar by using the Zoom ID. The Zoom ID for this webinar is 868-9816-5944. Again, that Zoom ID is 868-9816-5944. You can also find more information by going to coaching.oar.com.
It really depends on the recruiter's role in the legal recruiting firm. So there's just different types of people that are good at it. I used to believe that one person could do all these tasks. And that means the research, the talking to firms, the talking to candidates, the writing, all the different kind of roles that it entails. But unfortunately, I no longer really think that's the truth. I believe that recruiters these days many times are better off. In our company, sometimes we have people that are specialists that will only be responsible for talking to new candidates, and people that are only responsible for talking to law firms and so forth. But if somebody's doing everything, I think that the most important thing is that, and we do have recruiters that do everything, that they have like a very good personality, that they're likable, and they have the ability to connect with lots of different types of people. And they're typically the best recruiters are very likable right when you meet them. And I think that's, in my opinion, one of the most important things is just likable, having the ability to connect with a lot of people, having the ability to understand things, being driven by wanting to help people as opposed to by the wrong things, being in the profession for the right reasons. So a lot of times people will go into offices or businesses and things because they're maybe escaping something. Like, so sometimes people will become recruiters because they don't want to practice law anymore, right? But they don't know what recruiting's about. And so you have to understand what is good for you. And those things, that's my main recommendation, I guess.
So when somebody who's looking for a new legal job comes to a recruiting firm or an individual recruiter and is looking to find somebody to work with, what characteristics or what attributes should they be looking for that indicates like a talented or successful or just otherwise a good legal recruiter? So what makes a good legal recruiter?
The first thing is you have to feel comfortable with the person. So a lot of people will just try to bang it out, get you into new jobs as quickly as possible. And that's probably not what you need. Other people will seem like they have more of their self-interest at heart than yours. Other people will not be committed to you. So you won't get the sense that they're going to stick with you, and you'll just stop hearing from them. And you may stop hearing from them if you don't get a job immediately or you don't get interviews immediately. And so those are some of the characteristics and things that traditionally people haven't liked about recruiters. And I think that a lot of that stuff is accurate, a lot of different types of people in the business. But I think that at its highest level, you have to consider the person's ability to service you and make connections and get you into places that you might not get on your own. And there are recruiters that do that. And there are recruiters that are really good at getting people into places they wouldn't get into normally on their own.
And you mentioned a really important point about how a good recruiter for you is somebody who you feel very comfortable talking to, because it's true that recruiters need to get a lot of information out of you in order
Hmm.
to, best represent you to the law firms that they're submitting you to.
Hmm.
And I've heard stories where some candidates just don't feel comfortable sharing information for one reason or another. So do you know maybe why that is the case? And what would you say to attorneys who are maybe hesitant to share more personal details with the recruiter? What are the benefits of opening up to a
The main benefits are that if you're able to open up to a recruiter, then the recruiter can help you avoid problems that may happen with your candidacy with different firms. So certain firms may have different things that kind of freak them out. And so that if the recruiter is able to, understand what those things are, they can tell you to avoid some hot button issues with a firm. Now, that doesn't mean that you should go and be telling you to be dishonest. If a law firm doesn't like people that work at home, for example, then maybe a good idea would be to do whatever you can, not talk about how you liked working at home. Just say you're happy working in the office, if that's true. Those are just the kind of things. And other things about your personality, people sometimes will talk about their past mistakes, or they'll talk about things that may have been things that they may not should have done in the past. I don't know. But you just have to be careful about what information you share with firms and what you don't. The better you're able to do that, the better off you'll be.
Absolutely. And it also helps with the types of cover letters and other information that the recruiting firms and the recruiters are providing to the law firms. The more that they know about you, the more detail they can put into things like that. And that humanizes you, that allows them to make a connection on a personal level, which is a really good way to get an interview and to help you get hired down the road. And tell me a little bit more about that. Like you say in this article about how you put a lot of thought into the work products. So tell me a little bit more, like what other factors go into creating these work products? What all do you consider aside from just their background in terms of education and work experience? What else are you looking to get from what other types of information are you looking to get from the attorneys that
You want to understand what motivates them. You want to understand things on their background that they may normally not be promoting or talking about. A lot of times people will have special skills, or they may be, I don't know, they may have been a competitive athlete or something in the past. And just things that you might not realize that law firms that they like. And so if you can bring out all those kind of things when you talk to the person and you can understand that, then you can emphasize that thing. So the better you do, the better recruiter does, the better off they'll be. The better the recruiter does in terms of finding person's strengths, and better off their candidates can be.
And you mentioned a big advantage is that the recruiters and the recruiting firms have this wealth of knowledge about the law firms and the people who work in these law firms who do the hiring. So they know if they're sending you to XYZ firm and the person they're sending you to loves hockey, then if you're a hockey
Mhm.
player, they know to put that information in a cover letter. You're not
Mhm.
going to benefit from that wealth of knowledge if you're working on your. What else are you looking for or let me rephrase that. When you're working with a candidate, it's a huge benefit that you've worked with so many attorneys. So you really do see the potential in people and what they can become. So tell me a little bit more about that. What are some hints that somebody is destined for bigger and better, more prestigious law firms? What are you looking for in that sense?
Do you know the secrets to getting your dream legal job? We do. And one of the best things you can do is apply to jobs that fly under the radar. Applying to openings with very little competition means you stand a much higher chance of getting hired. But how do you find openings like that? For starters, you're not going to find them on major job boards, because these jobs are usually only advertised on companies' websites and in small regional publications. That is why we created Law Crossing, the most comprehensive database of legal jobs in the world. We have a team of people constantly working to find every single legal job out there. Unlike other job boards, which only list jobs that companies pay to post, we include every legal job we can find in order to maximize your chances of finding a job. So, what are you waiting for? Head over to www.lawcrossing.com to find your dream legal job today.
Well, one of the things that you can often see is certain people are just very motivated, and they have just a real passion for practice of law and what they're doing. And so when you see that sort of thing and you communicate that, those people are typically destined for great things. Other stuff that you see is you'll see people that are working hard and able to generate business at a young age or early in their career that seem to have a plan about where they want to go. And those sorts of people are also very marketable. And to people that have a history of upward mobility, so they may have started at one firm and moved to a better firm and another one after that, those people that be very marketable. People that are able to focus on something or really know that they want to be focused on something are very marketable, and firms like that. Those are some of the things that I see that I believe are some of the most helpful in terms of what makes people marketable, but there's always a lot there. Realistically, and this is something that everyone should understand, is some of the decisions that attorneys make being focused on a practice area, the ability to generate business at a young age, the ability to work hard and be loyal someplace before moving. All those sorts of things can be very helpful in someone being able to move to a better firm eventually. So those are, some of the things. So the ability of a recruiter to recognize that and those things that the firm wants are very helpful and can make a huge difference.
That's definitely true. And the recruiter is doing all of this work behind the scenes. So how does a candidate know that all of this is happening? How often do recruiters generally communicate with their candidates? And is that a sign of a good recruiter if they communicate often?
Yeah, a good recruiter will communicate often, but at the same time, a good recruiter will be very busy. So it's just you have to kind of balance what your expectations are versus the recruiter. So I believe that a recruiter that communicates all the time, any recruiter should communicate all the time. If the recruiter is representing you, you should be hearing from that recruiter and getting jobs from them, and you should be on top of everything with them. So that to me is one of the most important. They should be on top of it. I don't know what else to say about that. The problem is that most recruiters are not like that, and that to me is a big problem. And unfortunately, it ends up hurting a lot of careers because.
Absolutely. Communication really is key. If you don't know what's going on, then it really hampers your ability to make the best decisions. And I understand that recruiters really are working all the time. They need to be there, available for you, because if you're currently working in a law firm, you may not have the time to talk to a recruiter until the evening. So somebody who's more available and more flexible, more understanding is probably going to just have a better relationship with you, and that's going to help you further down the road.
Yeah, and the big thing is just what I don't like about the recruiting industry in general is a lot of the recruiters that do the work, just in all honesty, are failed attorneys. And so they bring the same level of enthusiasm to the recruiting practice sometimes that they may have brought to being an attorney, which isn't good. So now that's definitely not the case for all of them. And that's a horrible thing to say in a lot of respects. And by failed just means didn't enjoy the practice of law. So I don't, it could be that's why they failed. They just weren't a good fit for it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's other people that just haven't found their calling yet and go into recruiting, just like they go into law. There's other people but in a lot of cases, the people that go into it, they're just not motivated. They want a lifestyle job. And that's a problem. So if somebody's doing work because they want to have a nicer lifestyle, feel more relaxed and stuff, that's not a good thing. So that's one thing. And then the next thing is that you just have to be careful who you choose. One of the reasons I got into this job to begin with is because I was very motivated when I was looking for a job myself. And I wanted to find something good. And I realized my recruiter wasn't researching things. So I wanted to do it myself. So that's just kind of how it can work with the people as well.
Yeah, it definitely helps to work with somebody who's passionate about what they're doing, because especially recruiting, it requires a certain amount of entrepreneurship. Like, you're doing a lot independently. You have to do a lot of your own research and your own legwork. It's not just a lifestyle job where you can sit back and let things happen. Like, you do need to be proactive. So working with somebody who's passionate about what they're doing is going to yield better results for you. So, what are some ways that recruiters interact with the law firms that they're submitting you to? Like, how do they actually follow up on your?
They can call, they can email, they have good relationships with the firms, they can text. There's a ton of different ways they can follow up. Sorry,
Do you
go ahead.
find that the law firms tend to be more communicative or more responsive when it's a recruiter asking them about a candidate versus a candidate asking about themselves?
Oh, of course. Yeah. If a recruiter's asking, then they tend to be much more responsive because they realize that they're going to be dealing with that person on an ongoing basis. If it's just a candidate, you may get the cold shoulder or not hear the way you want to. Yeah, that definitely happens.
Absolutely. And you're benefiting from years and years of experience that the recruiter has of just doing that, of just talking to law firms, just finding jobs for attorneys.
Mhm.
And another one of the big benefits of working with a recruiter is that they can help you learn from the mistakes that you may have made in your career, whether that's a mistake you made while working in a law firm or potentially a mistake you made in moving to a different law firm or leaving the law firm environment and then trying to come back. So there's a lot of ways that they can actually help you learn from things that you've done that you may not have realized had an effect on your career. So is there anything that you want to, say about that, or any success stories that you've seen about candidates who really took away a strong lesson from working with you or one of your recruiters?
You mean in terms of the follow-up or what?
Oh, just in terms of learning from past mistakes or helping attorneys see the light and grow from a mistake that.
People make mistakes all the time. So I think that the big thing is a lot of times people, when they go into a search, their self-esteem is low because of issues that they may have experienced in their search. If you're able to bring someone's self-esteem up by showing them what they're capable of, that often makes a big difference.
Absolutely. And again, that goes back to what we were talking about is having an advocate, having somebody on your side who's able to help you see the best in yourself and
Mhm.
really give you the encouragement and the enthusiasm that you need in order to stand out amongst all the other candidates and get hired. So, one of the last points that we want to talk about today is about just the breadth and depth of connections that legal recruiting firms have, and how legal recruiting firm is able to introduce you to and submit you to a wide variety of law firms that you may not have ever been able to find on your own. So, can you speak to why is it just so important for attorneys to submit to a wide variety of law firms and not just a handful?
I'm sorry, sorry, go ahead.
So why is it so beneficial for attorneys to submit themselves to a really wide variety of law firms in a number of different markets, as opposed to restricting themselves to the law firms that they may know of or aspirational law firms that they dream of working in one day? Tell me about just the benefits to attorneys of tapping into the wide variety of law firms that legal recruiting firms have access to.
Do you want to grow your legal career? A lateral move might be the right choice to get you on track for your career goals. Working with a legal placement firm like BCG Attorney Search can open doors for you and help you live the life you dream of. If you're looking for a new legal job, send us your resume so we can help. Visit www.bcgsearch.com and click on Submit Resume to be paired with one of our legal placement professionals who will work tirelessly on your behalf to get you your dream legal job. Submit your resume to www.bcgsearch.com to get started today.
The big thing I think it's a very loaded question and in terms of the firms that they apply to, but I think a lot of people just bring in a lot of prejudices into their search. So they believe that certain types of people or certain types of firms are bad, certain firms are bad, certain firms are good. And so they don't really open themselves up to possibilities. So they don't really understand how the market works and where they could possibly get better opportunities, or there's just a million different things that they may not understand when they're doing a search. And so when you look at different firms, you're giving yourself the opportunity to understand what the market really is and where where you could really possibly, the places you can get jobs at and where there's better opportunities. And there's going to be different sorts of opportunities all over. And that's really the main thing is you need to understand, where the best opportunities are. And so many times what will happen is people will, they'll want to they'll start their search and they'll only be interested in a certain firm or a certain type of firm. And then if they see you trying to send them to many firms, they get very suspicious and they think that you're trying to do something wrong. And then they stop working with you when the best thing they could possibly do would be to look at more firms. That's often the smartest thing that people can do. So that's how one of the most important things that I think about is just your ability to look at a lot of places can be very helpful in WAPA.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, working with a legal recruiter is giving you a ton of benefits. So it really does add a lot of value to your legal job search.
Mhm.
And just as importantly, it can save you a lot of time Because if you are currently working, you may not have the time to find firms and adjust your resume and write cover letters and submit to all of these different firms, follow up, et
Right.
cetera. So it really is like a double whammy. You're getting the benefit of their experience and their connections, but you're also getting the benefit of having somebody do the legwork on your behalf.
All right.
Yeah, that just about wraps things up. Is there anything else that you want to add about working with legal recruiters or anything else that you want to say about BCG Attorney Search?
No, that's those are the main things. And I think there's a lot of articles on our site that you should read. That people could read about working with recruiters. There's just a lot of information out, and that's really what I recommend is just reviewing everything and getting a sense. The thing about recruiting is that the big thing I would say is it's a profession. So it's a profession and it's a serious profession, and there's a lot of people that go into it that don't really know what they're doing, and there's other people that are in it and really do know what they're doing. And there's people that are in it that you may not have heard of even that are good at it. So you just have to make sure that you put yourself, you find people that you're comfortable with and work with. I think that we're very good at it, but I certainly think that there's other people out there that have the ability to be good at it too. It's just, I feel like what we do is much different than anyone because of a lot of the skills we have. But at the same time, I don't, fault anyone for doing the best they can with their job search and really trying to find as many opportunities as they can, however they find them.
Absolutely. And that is one of the key points is that you need a lot of opportunities because you never know which one is going to be the right one for you. You never know which is going to be the one that works out. So the more opportunities you have, the faster you can get a job and more likely the better job that you can get that's a fit for your wants and needs. Great.
Okay.
Thank you for your time today. That was a really great podcast and I look forward to the next one.
Okay. Thank you.